All right, guys. Well, first of all, thanks a lot, Adrian, Robert, Neil, for inviting me for today's workshop. So I appreciate you guys letting me educate our real estate investors on understanding the permit processing and how the city operates. So my very first question to everyone in the room is, has anyone done permits before? So, okay, about half the room. Perfect. Okay, so for the other half that doesn't know too much, well, it's not just really drawing and just submitting. There's a lot more steps involved. And so today's workshop and my goal here is to help you understand the process and to see how that really helps you in understanding to buy the deal, if it makes sense, running the numbers, working with contractors, and then any different types of exit strategies is what we're really trying to educate you on. So let's go a little bit more into it. But first, a little bit about me. If you guys don't know me, Henry Rojas. I run an architectural company for the last 7 years. I used to deal with custom homes and house additions in the first 2 years of my career, and then during the COVID period, I decided to shift over into real estate. But during that whole 7-year period, I was working on real estate projects as a side hustle. So 9 to 5, custom homes, after hours, real estate investor projects like apartment buildings and duplexes. As of today, we've completed almost over 500 investment units in Ontario. And our portfolio really includes from duplexes all the way up to 100-unit apartment buildings. So we've done it pretty much all of it. But again, with the real estate world, the way it's shifting, anything's possible. Like recently, we've just been retained last night to do a 29,000 square foot church conversion just in Bradford. So we're going to be doing something very exciting in the next couple of months. So if you guys have any questions about that, feel free to ask me on that because it's a very big building there that we're trying to add in as many units as we can. So it's going to be very interesting. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. Next, this I've been spending a good time period on. If you guys seen my little posters about the 6 steps value add, that was a little bit of a simplified version of what this is. So we're going to start a little bit on this side. If I can zoom in a little bit. Here we go. So.
Toronto subway, man.
Honestly, yeah, it really is. There's so many different routes that we can take for this type of real estate journey. So I want to start you guys off with as simple as number one thing is find your property. A lot of you guys, understand that process. I don't need to teach you about that. But this is like the first step. Off market or on the listings, you find a property. Next thing you do, you visit the property, you run some preliminary numbers. Basic, easy stuff you guys already know of. Next thing we do, was at least my business and helping real estate investors to look into the zoning. Depending on what your strategy is, you could be looking at a flip, which you're not really affecting any zoning or anything into the city. So number one thing is, you need to check zoning for what you're proposing. And then yes or no. So this is really just a roadmap to see what route you're taking here. So we're going to go with like the main route, which is colored in red, which is what we're typically doing for investors on a daily basis. So you need to check zoning, what you're proposing. Next, my team deals with like the zoning investigation package, which we call ZIP. So you find a property, you're interested in it. The numbers seem to make sense preliminary. So you let us know. We look into the zoning. And how we look into the zoning, it's not just asking the city about what the zoning label is, because anybody can really look into the zoning. You as investors, you guys can type in the city, like City of Hamilton, then write down interactive zoning map, and you can easily find the zoning information there. The next level of that is trying to see what the zoning bylaws specifically say. And this is where it gets very tricky with some investors, where right away they talk to the city and they're like allowed to do multiple dwelling. But what does that really mean? Especially in the downtown area in Hamilton, there's so many different zoning in the downtown area. For example, we were working on a project on King Street last summer, I believe, and we were allowed to do the entire building to residential. But the problem was they were saying our residential units need to be about 3 feet high from the ground level, from the street level. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but when we're running construction numbers, that's when it starts affecting our costs there, and it affects the ceiling height. Because imagine, this is about 11 feet. Now we have to raise it up 3 feet. And now we only have, 8 feet left, which is perfect. But in some areas, we have low ceilings, maybe only 10 feet high or 9 feet high, and we can't accomplish what we're trying to do in that building. So numbers don't make sense. So look into the zoning bylaws you really have to look into the fine print is what I'm talking about, right? Especially if you've done it before, you'll notice that the zoning bylaws lead you from one place to another place to another place, and it's just a mess of things. So number one, zoning. So that's what we sort of provide to you guys, give you a high level understanding of what you're allowed to do for that property, right? Next question we have there is like, does zoning support your proposal? Yes or no? If it does not support your proposal and we have to go through committee of adjustments and minor variance or rezoning, you're going to have to run your numbers again, and if it makes sense to do all that process work. Because from my experience doing minor variance, committee adjustments, rezoning, it takes anywhere between six months to a year. It takes these tens of thousands of dollars, so you really have to look into the numbers. Does it make sense for you, right? Is that your strategy? If no, then you go back to your start. That's really what it is. If yes, then we're going to go through, are you going to do permits? That's the next question there, right? So you're going to do permits? Yes, great. You're going to find somebody like myself or other experts in the field to help you with the building permit process. If no, and this is where we're going to separate from the train here a little bit. If no, where is it? You're going to find a real estate investor focused contractor, right? And what I mean by that is, again, your entire power team has to be real estate investor focused. From your accountant, the lawyers, the agents, your contractor, your building permit experts, they all have to be investor focused because only they will understand your struggle. So you find a contractor, then the contractor may or may not want drawings, and if so, great, you get somebody like myself to be involved. If no, because some contractors want to speed up that process, then you visit the property, you have the contractor provide their budget breakdown, because again, it's not a quote. You're looking for a budget breakdown to see what expenses you have from the plumbing, electrical, HVAC systems. You want to understand how it works, and you want to understand if you can reduce it in some way or form. So you start construction work there, and we're almost at the goal line, and then you hit order to comply letter from the city. Who's heard of that letter before? All right. So some people don't know about that one. It's basically some cities will have inspectors around the neighborhood doing their rounds, checking if people are doing illegal construction work. If they find it out, they'll come knock on your door, see what you're doing. And if it's cosmetic uplift, like changing a kitchen or a bathroom remodel, you're in the clear. That's not really permits. Or flooring or paint, that's not really permits. It's when you're doing structural work or when you're removing some walls, the city will come knocking and then slap an order to comply letter to make sure you go through the permit process. So it's really a gamble at that point. So do you take the gamble, starting construction without the permits or drawings or whatever? If you get caught, then you go back all the way here to the top here, where you're hiring somebody like myself to go through the permit work, right? Now, I'm not saying you're going to get caught every single time. I'm just saying be smart with what you're doing. One example is that, it's always a garbage bin. It's number one, always a garbage bin. You're going to do some demo work and put a garbage bin in the front. That's already a red flag for the neighbors in the area because you never know who's going to call in the city, right? So that's one little tip there. But that is one route that some investors take. They go through this way. But now we're going to return back to the main route here a little bit, right? So now we're back here. So we're back to hiring an investor-focused permit expert here. What we do is we'll provide you a soft cost breakdown because how you understand your numbers is the hard costs and soft costs, right? The hard costs are like the construction fees, everything to do was on site. The soft costs are not just the drawings, but also the consultants and engineers, everyone involved in doing all the paperwork, right? So provide you with that at a high level, trying to understand, you're looking at about $10,000, $20,000 for just soft costs. That involves, again, the consultants, engineers, even the planner fees are, again, fairly high nowadays. So try to understand that. Or if you have a heritage building and you're looking to do a heritage study, we're looking at $14,000, $20,000 on just that alone. So just be prepared. It's not as cheap as some people would assume. From there, if we're looking to work together, then we're going to 3D scan the property and then document the existing conditions. And from here, it gets very interesting because the way we're documenting certain items is a very high level with the 3D scanner and the recording glasses to make sure we capture everything we need, right? So how this usually works, like I'm sure some of you have seen the ones that some other companies put it up in the middle of the room and then it scans all around. Similar concept, but instead it's a handheld, so we're not wasting time. The idea is to be in and outside the units in like 3-5 minutes, right? From personal experience, I've measured buildings, and I even measured the church the other week for, maybe a good 20, 30 minutes. So measuring a 29,000 square foot church in 30 minutes saves me a lot of time, saves you some speed, and imagine what it does for your building. So imagine telling your tenants you're not going to be in there for about half the day. You're going to be in there 2 to 3 minutes just scanning the property and in and out. So we're just trying to relieve that sort of pressure and annoyance from the tenant side. And in the recording classes, it's just more for our side when we're discussing about specific issues and documents on the project side. Because a lot of times some people will take notes, but some people don't remember everything. Having these documented classes will capture everything that we're discussing and making sure we're all on the same page. So we're going to this part right here. So we've done our due diligence, we've done the numbers, we've scanned the building, we've documented everything, and now we go 2 different routes. So number 1 route, we go through the permit route, which is pretty classic and normal. The alternative route, which is mainly for our large land developers and massive conversions, is going through the site plan approval and committee of adjustments sort of route. Now, for those of you familiar with Bill 23 that was approved last January 2023, you don't need site plan approval for anything under 10 residential units. So 10 residential units or less, you're clear from site plan approval. So that's perfect. Saves us a lot of time and effort. But the tricky part is some cities have considered even if you have 1 commercial unit in that building, you're automatically subject to that whole site plan approval, which gets annoying.
So just to confirm, the site plan approval is only for residentially zoned? Like if it's a different zoning, then...
It doesn't matter what the zoning is. It's more of like they see the number of residential units, right? So normally you would need to go to site plan approval. Before Bill 23, you need to go to site plan approval if it's like commercial or any sort of exterior work, which is majority of projects, right? But after Bill 23, they're like, okay, we're going to remove site plan approval for any project you have if it's 10 residential units or less.
Currently or...
Currently, right now. Right now, you don't have to go through site plan approval if it's 10 units or less. The big red flag is like any exterior work or, commercial work you're doing. So, for example, and this is why I love examples here. We have some properties in Hamilton where the ground floor is commercial and then we have like 8 residential units. That would technically fall under site plan approval because it has 1 commercial unit. If it was only 8 residential units in total, we don't have to. Alternatively, what happened in the past too is that we have 14-unit apartment buildings, and technically it would fall under site plan approval. But my argument with the city is that we're not doing any exterior work. Maybe we're adding 1 more parking space and busting out 1 more window, but that's not really exterior work technically.
But
So
we could be adding units?
yes. So we went from, I believe, a 12 to 14 units in Welland a couple months ago, and they were pushing us to do site plan approval. But my argument to them was we're not doing exterior work. We're adding 2 units, sure, but other than busting out a window and putting 1 more parking space, we're not really doing anything else. And they've agreed with my sort of interpretation there and just said, okay, you don't need site plan approval.
And are different municipalities different on that?
Yeah, some cities are a little bit different on the interpretation. Again, you have to make your case, right? So we'll submit for a zoning review, and then they'll push back saying you need this, and then I'll push back on why we don't, right? Again, you have to have some valid reasons. Exterior work is so vague; it's like busting out a window. It's not really exterior work, technically. But yeah. So back to this whole site plan route, we have here. Yep. So we're going to need to get a planner. So for those of you who's never worked with a planner, these are consultants in the field that really they're your lawyers when you're dealing with the city. So when you're dealing with the city, you're going to court. So instead of going to court by yourself, you hire a lawyer to represent you. That's similar to what these planners are. They'll go in there, they'll take our drawings, they'll take everyone's information from the consultants, the engineers, and they'll represent us during the whole, trial period there with the city. During the pre-con is what we call it. From there, the planners will go back and forth on. They'll review our drawings anyways, and then they'll submit to the city to see, if this proposal makes sense. And this is where it gets very vague because even though we don't follow a lot of the zoning stuff 100%, we go bigger than what's accepted. We understand the city is going to reduce it by a good 20%. So what I mean by that is if we have a 12-unit new build in St. Catharines, and what happened was we proposed 8,000 square foot new build. Today, it's down to 5,000 square foot. So after 2 years of struggle, they've reduced our 8,000 to 5,000. But we're able to get away with not having that much parking. So there's really, pros and cons to this situation. But that's really how it is. you really have to kind of over-design a little bit, knowing the city is going to reduce it by a certain percentage. From there, it just goes back and forth with the city. The timeline is very out there, just because from personal experience, we've had it from 6 months to right now even 2 years for a new build. So just prepare yourself. It's not as easy as a permit route, just because we have so many different consultants. So what I mean by that is you're hiring your planners, you're hiring your arborist reporter, you're hiring your civil engineer, your other engineers, your consultants. You're hiring your own power team against the city's power team. So you can imagine there's like 18 people in that Zoom call just discussing what can we realistically do with this property that makes it fair for both sides. So we're going back and forth a little bit between the cities and reviewing and all the other fun stuff until we get the actual approval from the city. Once we had the site plan approval or even committee of adjustments approval, now we're taking back into the permit route. So now we can get back to the normal stuff. Develop the drawings. We developed the architectural drawings, and then from there, we submitted to our engineers, the plumbing engineer, the HVAC engineer, the mechanical engineer. Anything to do with engineering, that's what we submitted to. They work on their stuff for a couple of weeks until we have the full package, and then we submit to the city. This gets very complicated because there are some projects that don't need every single engineer. And for example, here, we have a couple projects that the city, only on one of them, was requiring us to get electrical engineering for every single outlet, switch, light fixture of the building. And that cost us an extra $20,000 from the engineers. Now, majority of cities don't need that. This examiner was very specific and wanted that for the review. So unfortunately, we weren't able to fight that. They were pushing hard, and we had to submit new electrical drawings to show every single switch. Even though your electrician could probably tell you where all the switches and outlets can be, the city has a right to ask you for additional information. So keep that in mind. Okay, so you have your engineering drawings, right? So you find your focus engineers, engineering drawings, then you proceed to permit submission. Now, two things will happen once you're ready for permit submission. Number one, you'll submit for permits, which we'll talk about in a second. Number two, you will send that completed permit set to your contractors, and they'll take a good review on it. Right? It's a little blurry here, but basically, you want your contractor to kind of give you the breakdown of how much that project is going to cost you before the city looks into it 100%. So now you understand your numbers, right? Because even though the contractor tells you $100,000 today, 2-3 months now after the permit's approved, and the city adds their own little touch-ups and notes and requirements, that $100,000 you assume could jump up to $150,000, $200,000, or maybe less. It depends on what the city says. So just keep that in mind. Two things happen when you're submitting. Contractors got to review it, and two, the city gets to get a chance to look at it. Where was it? Here we go. Same process here. The city will review it. City will make comments, and then we get permit approval. Now, I'm going by this a little bit fast, but realistically, for duplex permits, because some people I know of are doing duplexes now, we're looking at about 3 to 4 weeks in timing in the GTA, Hamilton, and Egress area. We're doing some projects right now outside the city, up in Collingwood, London, and even Fort Erie, and they're taking about 2 weeks, just because they're not as busy as the city life is here. So just keep that in mind. Every city has a little bit different timing. Even though the building code specifically says 2 weeks, the city has a right to adjust that to their current volume of work. So keep that in mind. For triplexes, fourplexes, and some of the small builds up to 10 units, the thing with those building permits, if you guys are working on those multi-units, now that 3 and 4 units are allowed in Ontario with most cities, is that they fall under a building definition. So a house is 2 units or less. 3 units or more is considered a building, and therefore your project is going to be shifted into the other bigger projects, like the skyscrapers, like the big developments. That's who reviewing your triplex, really. And what does that mean for you? What it means is it's going to take a little bit longer for them to get to your project, just because the volume of work that they have is so much, and the complexity of that work is a lot greater than a simple triplex. So, does it make sense to do a triplex? Depends on your timing. What we've done in the past too is right now we have 2 permits on our duplex that we're going to do triplexes on in the future. We just want to get that duplex permit today so we can start construction work. So during construction, then we'll submit for the triplex, and the goal is they'll approve the triplex by the time we're near end of construction. So there's different strategies to go about that. I'm not saying to stand the world there. Sorry, yes?
On average, for a triplex conversion,
Mm-hmm.
legal, how long does it take with the city?
We're looking at about like 2 or 3 months, really, realistically.
That's it?
2 or 3 months. It could take a little bit longer depending on their volume. Now it's a lot worse just because if you guys haven't heard about it, the city did have a cyber attack last Sunday. So everything's kind of shut down. So all my permits have pretty much been on a pause. Now, even before that, it was already going to be like 2 or 3 months, or if not longer. Depends on the city, depends on the examiner, and depends on the comments that they have back. Now, I can fight all day long for you guys on certain items from the city, but does that make sense to fight them all day versus like complying and getting your permit out? It just depends on the level that you want me to fight for you at. But yeah,
And that's with no revisions?
yeah, pretty much no revisions, yes. If there's revisions, now we're going to go back and forth on because the thing is, the city will have comments, maybe 5 different comments, whatever it is. My team will respond to that, or any expert you hire will respond to them next day. But then the thing with the city is they won't look at it for another 2 or 3 weeks because that's their standard, right? So even though it's as simple as, Henry, just add this one note and we're good. Okay, I'll add it today. 3 weeks later, I don't hear back until, I follow up with them. So it's gone to that point where the city, we're just numbers to the city at this point. So we're really just following their process there.
Is this triplex question, is this relating to renovation or new build?
Conversions.
Conversions.
Yeah.
And then, so when you're doing that process, it's a triplex rezoning that's happening, or are some municipalities open to just having 3 units?
So there are multiple zones right now in Hamilton that allow up to 3 to 4 units, right? So we're really, that's the type of project we're speaking about.
Yeah, but is it being categorized as a triplex, or is it still?
So, okay.
Single family with?
Yeah, so this is how it works. We're all calling it like triplex, fourplex, sixplex, tenplex, right? That's our little slang there in the real estate world. But the cities have a different way of saying it. They're saying like single family home was 2 ADUs, right? Or a primary residence was 2 ADUs. Their ADUs is sort of the key word they're using. They don't like using the word triplex, duplex, whichever the
Like
case.
on the listing, like after it's done, it's still a single family, right? Like it still be considered a single family versus a triplex in some cases.
Well, okay, so if you have a property right now and you're trying to list it, and it is like a legal triplex, you can call it legal triplex, right? That's not an issue there, right? Especially when it comes to like insurance and everything else, they will ask you how many legal units are in the building, right? So I would say when you're listening, just call it legal triplex, right? If you're for sure it is a legal triplex, because that's another thing. A lot of property owners will tell you it's a legal triplex. I have 3 units in here, but is it really? Can you confirm that was the city?
But like on MPAC, it doesn't change.
On impact?
Like on MPAC, the actual categorization of it.
I don't believe so. No, I've never seen it change. Like, I don't think they have a category for that. Maybe multi-unit or multi-family.
Certificates is that what you order, Adrian?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just for the realtors in the room, and we've got into conversations like this all the time, and I just kinda chuckle, cause you'll call the realtor, and I'll say, hey, Isabel, I see you got that listing, you say it's legal triplex, do you have a zoning verification?
Yeah.
Isabel says, well, no, but, Geo says it's 3 units, so it's legal. No, it's not. Oh, yes, it is, Geo says it is. Geo's 99% wrong, all the time. So, if you're a realtor and you're advertising a legal duplex or a legal triplex, shy of having the zoning verification from the city of Hamilton or whatever jurisdiction you're in, Geo means nothing. 0. So just food for thought, because we've got obviously dealing with investors and these properties all the time. We get into these conversations all the time because we're looking to buy them with our clients, and we know the difference between Geo and a zoning verification. So don't ever say to somebody on the phone, well, Geo says it's 3, so it must be legal. Or there's 3 meters on the side of the house, so it must be legal. No, it means 0.
Just to add to that, we did like a duplex conversion a little while ago, and after everything was done, permitted as a legal duplex, asked the city for like any proof, and they're like, nah, you gotta pay for a zoning verification. But the inspector was like, take the permits and take the email that I say like your permit's closed out, and like offer that and be like, hey, this is the proof, and if you want to get a zoning verification, you're more than likely to go ahead, and I can confirm it is. But they won't give you, even after you've done the conversion, anything to prove that you have done the conversion. You have to pay a zoning verification still.
Yeah.
It's like $300, $200.
It depends on the speed too, because sometimes they'll get you like the 5 business days or 10 business days, right? So it depends on the cost there. But yeah, if you want 100% guaranteed, get a document from the state to say it's one or the other, right? Even for example, like they'll give you a zone verification, and they'll say it's 3 illegal units, or a single family with 2 illegal units. Now, what do you do at that point? Do you sell it as is, or do you try to make it illegal units? It's up to you to decide at that point, but just keep that in mind. You're looking for the key words that they're all legal units. Okay, so now we're going back and forth with the city. We have finally permits approved after God knows how many weeks or months. You have different strategies here. Either you have the permits approved, you can sell the approved plans to another investor or homeowner or whoever is interested to buying the plans. It is one strategy, so you don't have to do the construction work. You don't have to deal with the city inspectors, so that is one way to kind of flip a property in a way. The second route, of course, is the construction route, which now we're going back a little bit to the finding your contractors and starting the construction work here. And then we get into the fun part of like inspection phase, construction completed. And then once construction is completed, you can decide to either, this thing's like, okay. Decide to either rent out the units like normal and then refi, or sell the complete construction vacant building, because that's starting to become very popular nowadays where people are looking to get vacant building. Now, of course, they're looking for vacant, unfinished, kind of run down properties. But also, if you sell as a vacant unit, now there's nobody living in there. They can decide on what rentals they can get for that property, right? So that is another option there. I usually go with a refi route just because it's a little bit easier for me, and just I like to keep my portfolio there. Oh, lovely. Let's see. Can I go here? All right. So we pretty much gone through this whole roadmap here. Hopefully it wasn't too much information there. My main goal today is to help you guys understand the process, right? It's not just doing drawings. It's not just submitting them for permits. There is a process here that we have to kind of see what strategies you have and what your exit, route there. So,
Have you seen people refinancing and then selling?
not that I'm aware of. No, they usually do one or the other.
Yeah, because I heard that the mortgages through CMHC are transferable, like the 50-year, and that's almost like an advantage on selling.
Oh, okay.
What's the point? Because you have to pay that off before, like prior to selling, you have to pay
He was
that.
just saying
No,
that you
it's
can transfer,
transferable.
you can assume the mortgage.
Yeah, so like transferable mortgages, and it's like a incentive, and you can get an uplift. Like I heard more in Toronto on some of those types of projects.
No, I'd be interested to learn a little bit more, right? Because if you can transfer that whole work, right? It's already done.
That's what I'm saying.
I might as well do it. Yeah.
Most of it's the financing, right?
It's commercial, yeah.
That's if you're looking for turnkey. Like I'm gonna go buy an apartment building that has an existing CMHC mortgage on it.
That's what I'm
That's
saying.
transferable to me,
Yeah.
let's say it's 3%.
Yeah.
So if
can
I wanna buy turnkey and leave my money in there, obviously we do more of the buy, renovate, refinance. So I'm getting my money out. So it just depends, but yeah, if you have a client looking for turnkey, we have something on the mountain right now. The guy has a 9-year left on a CMHC mortgage at 3.5%, assumable. And he did exactly that. He refinanced his apartment building last year, took out a chunk of money, and now he wants to sell it.
Yeah.
And he wants somebody to take over his assumable CMHC mortgage at like 3.5%. There's 9 years left on it. But if we can't find anybody to take that mortgage, to break it, there's $100,000 penalty.
Yeah.
But if somebody's just looking for a turnkey, go buy that building, 3.5%,
That's it, yeah.
and just let it ride.
That's what I just recently heard about, is that once you get the financing and then you sell it and there's another uplift. I never heard of that before, but
That'd be interesting to kind of look into a little bit more, actually. Yeah. Okay. So
9.
next.
1 or 2 vacant, 9 total. It's up on Fennel on the mountain.
So next thing for like the investors and realtors in a room, when you're looking at a property, these are sort of the 6 things I've looked at when you're looking to see if you can do conversions in Hamilton or any of the cities you're working in. Number one thing is room size, and this is what gets some investors kind of in trouble here, where they are looking at, like, let's say a basement unit or an attic unit, and they're seeing like, oh, it's got one bedroom, it's got a kitchen, it's got everything we need, but the room size does not follow today's building code. So what I mean by that is you have a small living room here, but we're off by maybe 12, 20 square feet based on the building code. We got to take this wall and move it that way, or we have to enlarge it to make sure it meets building code, because that unit may not be a legal unit. So if it's an illegal unit and you're trying to legalize it, but everything's already there, you might have to do some more renovations to make it up to date to today's standards. So room size is very important. The only rooms that don't fall under this room size requirement is like bathrooms. There's no minimum bathroom size really, and there's no minimum closet size. So other than that, there's a minimum bedroom, minimum living, minimum kitchen, everything to be included there. Next, and this is a big one, the exits and egress of a property, right?
Before you move on, Henry, what is a room classified if you end up with a room in a house that doesn't meet any of those requirements? Is there a designation for that? Or?
So let's say, you know, it doesn't, well, first of all, to be a legal unit, it has to have the live-in, dining, kitchen. So if you've gone through all those room requirements and you have an extra room, it could be a bedroom, it could be an office, it could be a den, it could be a rec room. Depends on like even what that current tenant is using it for, right? I typically go with like bedrooms. If it's like,
Not a minimum requirement for a bedroom then?
there is a minimum requirement for like minimum size requirement. There's no minimum
Thinking outside of something that like is just,
open space.
yeah, that's what they would classify it as then?
Yeah, I typically call it a rec room, right? A rec room, that's it, right? If it's outside a living and dining space, and it's a separate space altogether, then yeah, I call it rec room, just to simplify it. The problem with that is, if you look deep enough into the building code, you need windows for that room, right?
I was wondering is like,
Yeah.
you end up with,
So right away, you need windows. That was one of the points here, but we'll get to it now. Like you need windows for a bedroom and living and dining. You don't need a window in a kitchen and a bathroom, right? But once you have a rec room, that's one of the rooms that are undefined by the building code. So now you need at least a small window there. Well, great, right? Yeah. But what I do is instead, I'd be very creative and try to add that part of the kitchen living room. I'm like, this is the living room and this is the dining room part of it, you know? Even though there's a small hallway between them, that's how I consider it. And as long as you're being straight up with the city, they usually take that in consideration. So now I don't have to add another window to that location. It's all one big room and we're making use of the windows in that living room.
an office or something like that too?
Whatever, as long as it's a finished area, they will want you to have a window.
Right, okay.
You could demolish that area and put a door in front of it just to say it's like a cold room, for instance, but why do all that work, right? Sorry, somebody else had a question?
I was going to talk about, you're calling it a rec room. What would the difference or the similarity be if we called it a den? And what does that mean?
So there wouldn't be too much of a difference there. It's just really what you're calling it, right? I call it a rec room if there's an open space, but I know some realtors want to use it as a den open space just for obviously selling purposes. So one bedroom plus den. The only problem with that is we're misleading some people and calling it like an open den because it's not really closed off. Most dens are really closed off from the outside space with a door or some sort of wall structure just to make sure it looks like a bedroom, but it's actually a den. So, for example, if you have one of these offices here, a small little room that doesn't meet bedroom size requirements, and you want to call it a den, you can, but as soon as you do that, you need to add a window there, right? Because a window is required for any finished room area. Or if you want to call this a walk-in closet, then you don't need a window here, right? So you can do that.
Does a window have to go outside?
How do you, like, it's got to be on the exterior wall.
Like here.
Yeah, so some of the
window here going inside.
Yeah. Okay. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky because some cities have interpreted that differently. It's a little bit awkward there. We've had some permits where we had massive windows, like these giant windows on the front side, and had those little transom windows that you see here at the office, and they would allow that to be the window inside the bedroom. Not all of it, but a certain percentage of it, right?
You see that in some condos.
Yeah.
Like a window that, or like a glass.
Sliding door.
Yeah.
Frosted.
Yeah. So they would allow that. It just depends on the examiner and how they're interpreting it. So far, I haven't had too much pushback, but the problem is, it's like now you're in the gray area with the city. It's a win or lose of that situation, right? And if you're wrong, now you got to change all the drawings, right? So it's definitely a risk at that point.
How the builders get away with the condos and because the things they call dens are they're interesting.
Yeah, but there's no minimum size requirements for a den, right?
Yeah.
Like you can make the den as small as you want. We've done dens
They
like
usually don't have windows, like the builder dens.
No,
Mm-hmm.
if it has a window and it has a closet,
They're
they'll
called-
put it
Yeah.
in the bedroom.
yeah, like you only need a window in a closet, right? So they could advertise it on the paper side as a closet, and then when they're constructing it and they tell the new buyers it's a den, right? They could get away with that. Is it ethical? I don't think so, but like depends on what you want to do there.
What, in terms of construction, can you ever have like an internal column of windows or something that goes to an area that you actually can't leave to? Or is the designation required that the window is a point of egress? Like,
So, so this is another situation we're in. We saw a building not too long ago where they had like a courtyard in the middle of the building, right? And because it's an existing courtyard, they had original windows there, and we can make use of that and provide lighting from that courtyard. So that works. That can work there. The problem is some of the other buildings we're looking at, we want to build a new courtyard in a way. So the idea is, and this is funny because I was talking to Taco, the investor, about this. Why don't we build a new structural wall in the middle of the building, like yay big, and just raise it all the way up, brand new, and then put windows on that side? Because what you'll see with some of the buildings that you're looking at in the commercial side, multifamily in Hamilton, a lot of buildings we have right now are so deep that you can only fit in 2 units, front and back, because there's no windows on like the middle side. So we want to add in that little column area, like the little courtyard.
building, for example, right? There's no side windows because you have the buildings, but if you had something in the middle.
Something like this. Like if you had a room like this in the middle of a building and put windows on each side, like the way we have it here, you could get away with another bedroom or another unit, right? So that is a strategy, but we're still running numbers on the structural
Would
thing.
they ever be pushed back on that not because it's considered a window?
The only pushback we talked to the city is like the fire shutters, right? So because the windows are so close, if there's a fire on this unit from this window, they want to make sure that this unit's safe from that fire. So you're going to put like a fire shutter above the window, and it will just come down as soon as they detect the fire. Or you can make it glass blocks, right? If you've seen like some of the, dentist or doctor's office, you'll see those little 8x8 glass blocks. That's what we'll put in.
Fire rated those?
Yeah, they're like wired glass blocks is what they call it, right? Sorry, does somebody else have a question or no? Okay.
The sunroofs and things.
So I've done that too. So we did a project in Port Cobar about a year ago, and we did a second floor remodel, and we didn't have enough wall space for a normal window. So basically, the wall was probably coming up to here, and then slopes all the way. So what we did was we added a skylight to the bedroom areas on that second floor, and the city would allow that. The only issue is they want us to have an actual ladder to that window. Because it was so high up, they're like, what if there's a fire in the bedroom? How do you get out? If the door's blocked off and your only option is a skylight and you don't have a ladder, it doesn't work. So we have to actually build in an actual wood ladder attached to that skylight in the middle of the bedroom. So it's ridiculous, but it passed by permits, and whatever the investor wants to do afterwards, it's outside my hands, right? But it does work at that point.
If, quick question on that, if they did remove that ladder afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a fire in that building, would they be liable because they had removed the second egress?
Yes, they would be, right? Because on paper, we told them that the way out from the bedroom is from that ladder, right? Now we have to kind of be smart with the ladder. Like, how can we put in the ladder to make sure it's safe, but also not make it look like it's stupid in the middle of the room? So maybe one of those foldable ladders was one of those options, right? But how do you fold that when the skylight's right above it, right? It gets a little bit complicated there. So, sorry, yes.
Now, does that avoid, what happens to an insurance policy if somebody takes that ladder out and there's a fire and someone's killed or house burns down?
Yeah, they would be liable for the entire thing because, again, on paper, this is a contract between us and the city, is on paper we have agreed to put in the ladder. If the investors took it out and not let anybody know about it, then, yeah, it would be an issue. If they had reached out to the city,
The investor would be liable.
yes, the investor would be liable.
But if the investor didn't know and the tenant took it out, then the investor's still liable.
Well, it would be more on the tenants than the investor, but at that point, then we're checking with the property management team to see if there's any sort of issues. Like some property managements do like their biannual like kind of walkthrough, right? And if they see it's not there, then now it's on you, right? Right. So it depends on your property management team. How often are you going to check out that unit, right? You go there today, they have the ladder. Tomorrow they take it out, and then there's a fire a week later, right? You've done your due diligence, you've taken pictures, and it was there before the fire. and the tenant's taking it out, it's on them.
It'd be an ugly lawsuit.
Yeah, so that's why in that situation, we were going to reinforce it to the ground, like you can't take it out, right? So it's going to be strapped into the floor system. But again, it looks ugly being in the middle of the middle of the bedroom. It's like, how can you structure your furniture, right?
Just make it a new trend and then everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a skylight and a ladder in the middle of the room.
100%. So that is one way to go about that. Like they bought this building, what was it, like 4,000 square foot, vacant. It was all gutted, and it didn't have the second floor. So we built a new second floor in this tall building here. So it made sense for them to do that sort of route. Okay. Back to this. So egress. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated with some investors. So you do need to have 2 exits per unit. And this is where it gets the difference between duplex and triplex. Number one was a duplex. You can get away with, well, everyone knows about the basement apartments. You have the side entry door, and then you have the egress window. That's cool. That's fine. That makes sense. As soon as you dip into like the triplex and more, that strategy does not work anymore. The egress, you still need it, but it does not consider to be the second exit. So now what do? What we've done before is actually keep the side entry door there and just make it a dedicated entryway. So that side door is the only way in and out for that specific unit. I know some investors have kept the side entry door for both units, but in this specific case, we would just close it off from the top and just have the side door just for the basement. That's it. Simple there, but when you start getting into like the attic space, that's where it gets a little bit complicated, because how do you provide a dedicated exit for an attic space, right? We've done wood decks before, all the way from the top, going straight down to the bottom, but that's a lot more fees and costs to that. So what we've done is kind of look for properties that already have it.
Sure, I have a quick question on that. So if you, as far as I know, if you share a staircase, let's say in a triplex or fourplex situation, if you share the same stairway going up, you need the exit, you need the second exit. If you don't, if they have their own,
So this.
you don't need it, right?
Yeah, so this is where I compare it to like existing apartment buildings you go into. If you go into an apartment building today, you'll see from every unit you have 2 ways out, two shared exit ways, 2 shared stairways is what you call it, right? So the same concept needs to be applied here, right? So if you are sharing an exit with one of your units, both units need to have another shared exit.
So for example, in my property,
Yeah.
the reason why I have that because I
Yeah,
share.
yeah, because yours had a shared, and then everyone has their own second exit outside on the back. So that works, right? So they have 2 exit ways, right? So, but again, that gets very tricky there. So yes,
So touch on that. So let's say if you've got the duplex, right? And then the main floor level has its dedicated entrance from the back. The top floor has a dedicated entrance from the front. You only have one. Does it change it when each one doesn't share like an entrance?
yeah. If you in that situation when they all have their own dedicated entryway, you're fine. You don't need 2 exits,
Okay.
right? But as if they're both sharing one sort of exit, then now,
Door and like a hallway area.
yeah. So
You'll need 2.
yeah, 'cause we've had situations where we walk through a front door and then there's a unit in front of me and there's a unit beside me, and that's a shared exit.
Okay.
So that means that main floor needs to have another exit on the backside. Now that exit on the backside can be their own individual backyard door, or they have to have shared little stairway on that side,
Okay.
right? Like I know the situation that you're talking about. It's like we dealt with one maybe a week ago. Same situation there. Yeah.
Just wanted to touch base.
Sorry, first, and then we'll go to you afterwards. Yeah.
Like let's say if you got a basement unit, that came across where the inspector said, if it has a back door, not a side entrance, a back door, and that's the dedicated entrance for the basement, you don't need a second.
It doesn't matter where it is, as long as you have a dedicated exit.
So only one.
Yeah.
But like they're saying if it's from the side, you still need a second.
Now that I haven't heard of, because like how I've justified it to the city is like whatever it's coming from, front, side, back, top, bottom, as long as there's one way to get into the building, you're fine there. So
It's only serving that unit.
it's only serving that unit. Yeah, as soon as that door is like serving multiple units, then you're in a tricky situation, which is tough because some of the buildings that you're looking to buy, that previous owner probably had shared entryway or shared stairway that they didn't even consider to having a second one. So now you're
Why is it tricky when it's 2? Because isn't that better? Like more people can exit out of there?
Yeah, so let's say you have a fourplex, basement, main, second, attic unit, and they're all sharing one exit route. You need to provide another shared exit route for all of them. But building that in a small house is not really too much feasible, right? It's a lot more cost to it. Versus if you had your own dedicated exit way, like how I've structured it before, which unfortunately I don't have that building here, but basically the front door of a house would be for the upper stairs, the second floor. The basement would get in from the side entry door, and the main floor unit would have the backyard door to get inside. And the attic unit would have its own way from the exterior wood deck coming down. So that's how I've sort of structured that situation. But if they're all sharing, let's say the main floor, the main door, you come in and you have like a stairway going all the way up and down, you have to provide the same situation on the back side. But how do you do that without losing interior space or building out, right? So the cost doesn't seem to make sense if you're adding an addition to make that stairway or losing interior space affecting all your units, right? So that's why I personally like the dedicated exit way. It's a lot easier.
Do they let you have the main entrance for the main floor leading into a bedroom from the back?
They've allowed that in the past. It's not preferred just because of more property management sort of situation there. Trying to rent out the units a little bit difficult, but they've allowed it.
You happen to know, Henry, so Canada's the only country in the world that requires for duplex 2 exits. I believe they're among a handful of countries that requires it for triplexes, fourplexes, 3 or 4 unit properties. Do you know like what's led to like a lot of other developed countries? Through most of Europe, even apartment buildings in most places only require a singular. Is it to do with construction materials? Like, I don't expect you necessarily to know, or just your thoughts on that, because I know we're the strictest literally in the world for that. So
You like to make things more complicated.
Yeah, that's the go-to answer, really. Ontario likes to make things complicated. But yeah, no, I haven't heard too much about the outside, like Europe or anything. I've been there a couple times, but I didn't even notice they didn't have 2 exit way. I just assumed they did. But they're telling me they don't.
even that only have 1 stairwell for exit and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that.
I think it's more for safety. Like if you're talking about Europe, they don't want to kind of revise their architectural sort of existing buildings to get that second exit. But I would have to check their new developments to see if they have it.
On the new construction, and like, I wish I remember more of the details. Like, I saw some documentaries on it, and like, it was kind of making note that like North America, in particular Canada, literally, like, it's the only country in the world that for 2 unit properties requires that. So,
Well, I feel a little bit safer knowing there's 2 exits, right?
yeah.
But yeah, no, I'll take a deeper look into that. It's interesting to see like there's only 1 exit.
Source the information that I found.
100%. Sorry, I forgot about you, buddy. Yeah.
No, thank you for remembering. So I think I got my answer. If you have a bungalow with a finished basement that has a side door where it's shared, you have a choice now. You come on a landing, you go up and down.
Yes.
Is the problem solved now if for the main floor you have, say, a sliding door from a kitchen going outside? That becomes a dedicated exit for the main floor.
Yes. You can do that. Yes.
And then the basement, we can label it as that's for the basement, but really it's shared,
Yeah, the side door, right?
side door.
Yeah. So
So is it,
Let me-
is it accurate to say that from the city perspective, we're labeling the side door as the dedicated entrance for the basement, and the sliding porch door from the kitchen on the main floor is the dedicated entrance for the...
and what happens to the main front door? Yeah.
There is no front door.
Okay.
There's no front door.
So the only way to get into this.
You have a carport with a side door.
No. Okay. I
The
see.
side door is the front door.
Oh.
It's at the side of the house.
You know what? Yeah. One of the houses I'm looking at on Inchley. Yeah, they have the same situation. I open the side door. We come up a few steps, and then we're in the kitchen. Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's okay. So I'm thinking about it.
And then on the other side of the kitchen, there's a sliding porch door, which is rarely used, but it's there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to picture that situation. That's a little bit tricky, but yeah. So in that case, yeah, the rear side kitchen door, back door, would be the dedicated entryway, and then the side door would be for the basement. As long as you close it up at the top, between the kitchen and the stairway, right?
As long as what, sorry?
You close it up. You're coming up the stairs,
Yeah.
and you now enter the kitchen space. This dividing wall between the stairway and the kitchen needs to be blocked off, or alternatively.
There's another door, yeah. You make another door.
If you have a door there, what we've done in the past is kind of replace the existing door with a fire rated door. And keep in mind when you guys are looking at fire rated doors, they have a sticker on this side panel here. So if you want to be sure it's a fire rated door, you look for a sticker here and it'll tell you how much rating that fire door has. If it doesn't have a sticker, it's not fire rated. So just keep that in mind. These fire rated doors are expensive, but back to the point. So you can either close this whole area off with fire separation, or replace it with a fire rated door that can automatically close by itself. It's a self-closing. And additionally, what they've said to me in the past is make sure the lock system is there. So the tenant from the upstairs can't just open it and go straight to the basements. Neither can the basement come up. So the handle's there, it's just you can't open it. Right? Which I think this method's a little bit cheaper than building up a new wall just for this area. Right? The plaster, the paint, the trim work, everything, it doesn't make sense. Right? But to answer your question, yeah, you can do that at that point.
So that door has to be locked at all times?
Well, the city has been pushing it more recently in some of our projects, right? They're like, they don't want the tenants to go back and forth because their own dedicated space. They want to make sure it's locked, right? So now I have to add it to my permit set saying, by the way, we're going to lock it. Whatever you guys do on site, it's another different story. If you want to change the lock after inspections, that's up to you. But yeah, they've been pushing for it a little bit more. But yeah, in that situation, is that for a duplex? Yeah, duplex, right? Yeah, but then,
It's
Yeah.
a single family.
yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like, yeah, I guess, yeah, that would work at that point. Yeah, that would be the dedicated exit way. And then you had the egress window for the basements. Yeah, so that would work.
What would the second exit be for the main level then? Like if you're sharing that space?
Well, the dedicated exit for that main level would be the rear side kitchen door. There wouldn't have to be a second exit for that one. Yeah. But the windows above grade that you can open up, and that would be considered egress.
If they're wanting to seal it off so you can't exit the door that's in the shared space, what would,
The side door would be for the basement unit only.
but then what's the second exit for the main unit if you're severing?
Yeah, the main unit, the ground floor, right,
Yeah, the ground floor.
would be the windows. Because the egress windows technically,
On a sliding door window, you don't actually need it.
Yeah. yeah.
So for a basement apartment, the windows have to be, do you have to like make them bigger if they're like the builder size?
Yeah, so let's say, for example, you're looking at a basement, it's got those little traditional old windows. Number one, you have to increase the windows depending on how big your room is. The bigger the room, the bigger the window. Additionally, let's say, for example, you do make it as big as the window ratio is. If it's a bedroom, you need an egress window, which now you have to increase it even bigger. So this is the complication, because if you have 2 bedrooms, do you need 2 egress window? And the answer is yes. But if you have a bedroom with 3 different windows, do all of them need to be egress? I say only one of them need to be egress. The rest of them can be a normal window. As long as you meet the lighting requirement and the egress requirement, you should be fine.
Do you need a step up or something like I've seen that sometimes?
No,
where-
no. There's a different window. They call it like escape window. I think that's what it's referred to, but the egress window doesn't need it. Yeah, which again, I don't know why they have 2 different things there, but we just do the egress window and just put the awning on top of it. So that's how it usually works. Okay, I know I'm taking up a little bit of time, so we're going to rush through this. If you guys have any questions afterwards, you guys can ask me. Fire and sound. Fire and sound is the most important thing when you're looking at multifamily, just because, and this is where it gets tricky with even the duplex situation. You have a finished basement. By code, you don't. If you have a finished basement on permit, you don't have to kind of add sound insulation or more fire separation. But if you go to the basement and it's all unfinished, like open ceiling joists, now you're forced to add more fire separation and even sound insulation to it, right? So it gets a little bit more tricky and affects your construction cost there. Next, ceiling height's the most important thing too when it comes to like looking at the units, because now it's a difference between underpinning and not underpinning. So what I mean by that is a duplex is fine for the 6'5" ceiling height to the joist, to the finished floor level there. But in Hamilton, they've allowed us to actually go 6'1" underneath all the bulkheads. So any of the bulkheads you see in the basement, they can be 6'1" and you're completely fine. With multi-family conversions, 3 units or more, now the minimum jumps up to 6'11". So now when you're looking at the commercial building, you're looking at that basement, oh, it's got big space, we can definitely add a unit here. Make sure it's 6'11" from the finished floor up to the ceiling. If it's not 6'11", then we have to kind of adjust that or do underpinning, right? But also what jumps up is the minimum requirement for the bulkhead here. So 6'11", the total space, and then underneath bulkheads, which is the ductwork, the beam work, it's now 6'5". So you're basically adding 6 more inches to whatever the duplex requirements were. Next, natural lighting, which we already touched upon on. And then lastly, laundry service. As of today's code, we need laundry service in every single unit. They can either be inside a unit or they can be shared in a little common laundry room. Now, you don't necessarily have to build a whole room just for a laundry. We've gone away with just making a laundry closet. So maybe a 3x3 little laundry closet in the middle of the building, and that's common. So we've definitely been able to squeeze that through.
That's a requirement now?
It's been a requirement for a while, but the problem is it's like nobody was really looking into it too much, right? But now that, everyone's been doing triplex, fourplexes, the cities have been educating themselves a little bit more, and trying to see what else is required, right? It was already required for duplexes, and people were already doing it normally. But when you're hitting the 3-4 units, and you have to add in laundry for every single one, it starts adding up, right? So you can either add it into every single unit, which is going to cost you what? Appliances and the plumbing work, right? Or you can add in one for all the units, right? Now it just depends on your investment strategy. Are you trying to get the highest rent per unit by adding the laundry there, or just having the common laundry, right? It just depends, right? Some people just want to have a common laundry just because it's cheaper, right? But it makes sense there. It just, Yeah, there's so many different factors. I personally, when I did my triplex, I just added laundry to all of them just because I wanted to get the highest paying tenants, right? But that's my strategy. That might not be everyone's strategy. Sorry, you had a question?
No question, thank you.
Okay, yep.
Does a 2-in-1 machine count?
Yes, it does count. I'm not a big fan of them because the dryer system majority of the time doesn't work too well, right? Like it works, but yeah, it's not preferred if you're looking for a high value tenant, right? So it can, and we've done it like underneath the kitchen countertops, for example, right? So it does, if we need to, for like bachelor units. So depends on the situation there. Okay. Quick example of one of the buildings we're doing right now. This is a building I personally own with 2 other partners. It's on Wellington, 45 Wellington. Right now it's gutted, and originally it was a 5-unit, so 1 commercial on the ground floor, 2 on the second floor, and 2 on the third floor. And what we're doing right now is taking this 5 units and doing 8 units. Okay, so 2 on the main floor, 2 on the second floor as normal, and then the main floor is going to be separated into 3 different units. In the third floor, which luckily enough, the attic is so high, we're going to be able to add like a loft area to it. So these are going to be like our premium units on the third floor. So we're going to get 8 units in total. Right now we're under construction. We got permits approved last week, thankfully before the cyber attack. So we have that going. And this is the type of projects we're working on a day-to-day basis. So anybody interested in commercial buildings, let's take a look at the building. Or if you guys are interested for a property tour, we can definitely schedule something like that. We're in Hamilton anyways. We can take a quick look at it. Any questions about this?
Was this strictly residential?
This was mixed use.
When you bought it, there was commercial at the
Yeah,
bottom?
yeah. So it's been like it was run down for quite a bit of time. So I think what was it? I think the story was the owners who bought it 5 years ago. It was commercial, 2 units, and they were doing some construction work, and I guess they ran out of money and just left it vacant for like a couple years. And then we picked it up, and now we have permits to do 8 units.
On market, off market?
Believe it was off market. One of my partners, he's the guy who kind of finds these deals, and then yeah.
So how much time do you give yourself for like due diligence?
Due diligence is probably about 60 days, if not 90, if we need it, right? Like due diligence, it depends on the project type, right? Like for this, if we were going to buy something similar to this, I would keep at 60 days to kind of understand what the city's point of view.
60?
Yeah, 60. Just to understand what the city's point of view is, because number one is I'll go in there, I'll scan everything. I scan every building I visit just because of the off chance we'll do it, but scan it and then talk to the city, see what they interpret this as, if there's any new bylaws that's coming into effect, if the official plan is being updated in the next couple of years, right? Anything that would help us kind of get to that level of fully residential, right? So 60 days is pretty much a good enough time, even for the zoning review. For example, buy this building today, I do the drawings in about 3 weeks, and then we'll submit it for a zoning review with the city, just to make sure, here's what we're proposing, 5 to 8 units, like a site plan, and then let them tell us like what they think. If they come back to us saying, Henry, I don't like it, you can't do this, or there's so many different like little things that's going to affect us, we would just cancel the deal at that point, right? Or sell it to another investor who might want to take it to that level, right? But that's more than enough time because 3 weeks to do the drawings, and then 1 month to get the city review. So you're looking at 7 weeks, give or take. Yes.
Thank you. So for the third level now, is there another stairwell on the other side of the building that we don't see?
Yes.
To go into that, okay,
Yes.
there would have to be to satisfy that rule.
So this is Wellington. This front side is Wellington. I forgot this street, but yeah, there is an exterior back middle exitway on the back side there. Yeah. So yes.
A few questions. Was there a basement to this building?
Yes, there is. There's a basement, but it's too low. I think, what was it? I am 5'8", 5'9". It was like 6'1", 6'2". It wasn't that high. It's funny because it's not that high, but the last owners were already doing framing there. So we have the opportunity to kind of renovate that to where we want, but it's too low to make it like a legal unit. What's up?
Are you keeping the ground level ones, commercial?
No, well, no. We're keeping the ground ones residential. This will be a fully residential building at the end of the day.
Okay. Is this the building that you had to raise the ground?
No, that was on King Street. This is on Wellington. This is what I mean. Like, you're looking at the downtown area or whatever zoning you're looking into. Like, different areas have different zoning requirements, right?
Okay.
So to do the residential fully, did you have to do any rezoning or any?
So for this one in particular, we had to kind of fight against the city a little bit. So we had to have a separate application for this residential part. So not rezoning, but more just like committee of adjustment situation, right? So that's the only problem was this one.
That's interesting.
And you have parking there?
We don't have enough parking. That's why we have to go through minor variance. But they understand because in the downtown area, and this is where, when you go through the committee of adjustment, site plan approval phase, you get, what do we call it? A parking study, transit study from transit analysis is what they call it, to prove to the city that there's enough transit in the area to kind of support the additional residential load here, right? Is there a bus stop? Is there like any services?
What is that called then? Is it the minor variance to approve the residential, or is it a zoning site plan approval?
So the process is like minor variance. Like you're trying to get a minor variance through committee of adjustment.
On
Is
the
that
zoning?
on the zoning? Yeah.
Minor variance on the zoning?
Yeah, like, if you have any issue with zoning, let's say, the city tells me I'm only allowed to have 6 units, but I want 8 because we can fit 8. We'll go through minor variance. And depending on what they say, they're like, Henry, we've looked into this. What you're asking for is not minor by nature. We want you to do a rezoning instead. So at that point, then we have to decide, do we want to go through rezoning, which is like 6 months and like $12,000 in application fee, or just stick to the 6 units now, right?
So this was approved through a minor variance?
Yes.
Not a zoning?
Yes.
But then, like we were talking about before, would you essentially call it a unit at that point? Or
Yeah, because the end result will be 8 units.
units,
Yeah.
but not on the zoning? It won't be reflected on like the zoning certificate or whatever?
No, it will be reflected there. Yeah, because we have to separate the 2 applications. So number 1 application is to make it to was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it was like 6 units on the application, and then the 2 additional units would be for the minor variance, right? But that's what I mean. You can separate the applications to speed up the work. So now we can work on the construction for the 2nd and 3rd floor, while we're working on the application for the main floor.
Is the minor variance approved?
Not yet,
Got you.
right? But that's what I mean. It's like at the end of the day,
Process.
yeah, at the end of the day, it will be an 8 unit there, right? Because we're not getting too much of a pushback from the city, but the thing is, it's like now we don't know where it's going to be. City cyber attack, it's like now we have no idea. Sorry, you have a question?
So with the parking study, I guess the LRT is gonna help with that?
Well, that's another shit show we have to kind of look through, right? It's like now we have to check what we have to do for that LRT permit. I've been waiting for them to give me a call back on that. Because, well, how does that affect us? Like, because there's going to be an LRT, it should help support us. So if it does support us, do we really need a parking study or not? Right? Now, the city will probably want you to do it just to prove to them that, it will work. But now we're wasting an extra $2,000 or $3,000 for a study that we already know it's going to work. Right? I don't like wasting your guys' money, right? It's just like at that point, it's like now the city is pushing for paperwork that we don't need.
But it should help you.
It will help us. It will help us.
Are they gonna keep enforcing that parking study then?
Well, they have the right to do so, right? But this is where I come in and I kind of argue with them to see, like, listen, we don't need this because of A, B, C, D. But at the same time, it's like they push back hard enough. Do you want to wait this out for 6 months while I fight them? Or just do what they say for $3,000? It's up to you, right? I know, you're stuck in a hard place in a rock, right? I don't know. Sorry, yes.
Hey, Henry, so how long did this take you to get like everything approved? And like, what would a cost be for like an investor if we needed to get to that level?
So this took us about a year and a half now. So when we purchased the building a year and a half ago, give or take. So it's been at that point. There was definitely a lot of back and forth from the city. As I mentioned before, was the triplex and fourplex. Imagine was this building being the 8 unit it is. Not to mention the commercial space it was before. There was a bunch of pushbacks. But yeah, year and a half, give or take. And then in terms of costs, like the architectural costs, we were running about $17,000 after all the changes and everything required. And the engineering was about, I would say, $30,000, give or take. 30, 20,000, roughly.
What
Yeah.
are you typically spending, or what does it cost you just during the due diligence period?
Like it
Are
doesn't.
you willing to fork out just to see if this is even?
So our minimum fee is about 5,000, give or take, just to do the due diligence, and that includes like going out there, scanning the building, preparing the preliminary drawings, and yeah, and depending on what the city requires, because what I do is I'll do the site plan, I'll do the elevations, I'll do a 3D mock-up, right? But then they're saying to me, Henry, that's not enough information. We need more information. And now they're pressing more information from us that we don't need. So they do really need to see that side of the building. It doesn't affect anything, right? But yeah, so for our buildings that we're purchasing, yeah, I'll go out there, I'll scan it, I'll do everything I can for 3 weeks, send it to the city. City reviews it for 4 weeks, and then we should have an answer by the 7th or 8th week. And at that point, 60 days, and we can decide to either keep going or just stop it right there. Yeah.
And you keep the building vacant throughout that year?
Well, it's completely vacant right now. It was vacant when we bought it, so again, we're holding the cost of this massive building. It's not fun, but at the end of the day, our ROI should probably go up tremendously because we're taking it from 5 to 8 units.
Hey, for this, for the minor variance in total, do you already know the answer because based on the previous same situation that happened? Because we're not the first one doing whatever we do, right?
Yeah, and
Or it just depends on who you're dealing with in the city, if they're wake up on the right side or that kind of stuff.
yeah, so it's no two applications are the same thing, even though it's similar concept. Like if you were going to buy a building and do something similar to this, exactly similar to this, yeah, you might get a different answer. Or I can argue as I'm saying, hey, listen, guys, I just completed this building a week ago, and now my buddy and I were trying to do the same thing on this side of the city, right? They might take that in consideration if we get the same examiner. You know, if I work with Bob at the city and we're working with Bob again, we can work with that. But to get the same type of building, the same examiner, is so rare.
So if that's the case, if the only way for our project to work is the minor variance, so we better.
Yeah, so this is what I'm talking to some investors right now. I know, like most projects we're doing right now have to go through minor variance, but why are we going to stop the entire project just to get minor variance? We're going to separate the application, similar to this, right? We separate the application from the main floor and the second and third floor. So this, we got building permits, and then we told the city we're not going to do anything here. And now our second application is going to be just for the main floor.
Yeah, for this, but for the triplex conversion, duplex
Yeah.
conversion, if the only way to do it is the minor variance to work,
Yeah.
so it's better to.
You might as well do it at that point, right? But it's an extra like 4,000 for minor variance application and like 5 to 10,000 for planners, right? So just keep that in mind. The soft cost is tremendous. All right, take care, buddy.
Amazing,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. I think we spent enough time with this one. And then lastly, just when if you guys want to reach me out, phone number, email. I also have an online book that you guys can have access to on Instagram that teaches you guys all this like real estate stuff and multifamily conversions with the Ontario Building Code. We can do one-on-one property tour with some of our properties we have here in Hamilton. And I'll also be at the multifamily conference with a booth. So just in case you guys want to see. Yep. So perfect. So thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Amazing.
Thank you.
All right,